I predict a Duke's victory.
Football podcast with your host, Dolan and James. Dolan, what's that? From the top rope. He is the picture of toxic masculinity, according to his sister. His dream job when he grows up is to be an NBA player. If you asked him what his relationship status was, he would say, it's complicated. He will gladly take 1% of your portfolio year after year. He's New York City's loudest and most affordable financial advisor. Give a warm Crush Fantasy welcome to Johnny.
I love it. That was good. I asked him for a Travis or Jason Kelce-esque intro after his last. I was forced to watch the Taylor Swift pod. But
Dolan doesn't know. Dolan isn't in a relationship. He has no idea what you're talking about.
I mean, I'm aware of the podcast and Taylor Swift going on, but I did not give it a listen.
Johnny, welcome to the pod.
boys, thank you for having me. I'm humbled to be, I think, the first guest, if that's correct. So, yeah, ready to have a good time.
Well, Johnny, why don't you give the people a quick overview on how you got on here, how you earned your way on?
Yeah, I don't know if we'll have any overview of the highlights of this footage, but it was between me and another great friend of Dolan and James. There was a competition, 24 hours, do the most impressive thing possible, come to your mind. Doesn't matter what it was. So naturally,
maybe like 28 hours realistically. But
yeah. I mean, there was flexible on the deadline at the end there. I'm a man of immense talents. However, my greatest skill is just eating food fast and a mass quantity of food. So I was like, all right. So I said, all right, let me just eat a bunch of food.
Tuesday night.
Yeah, Tuesday night.
Tuesday.
Wednesday, didn't eat anything. And then I just think I ate 50 chicken nuggets, 5 bags of fries, and named 50 flex football players in, well, it's supposed to be like 15 minutes, ended up being like 29, but yeah, got the job done. And then you just saw a man just get his back put against the wall, didn't think anything left, and he just kept fighting. YouTube clips were started utilizing that footage, clipping it as like over speakers, but I don't know. I haven't seen that come to fruition yet, but I am licensing any use of the footage so, for that purpose.
Well, was that your takeaway as well?
Yeah, he took the words right out of my mouth.
Dude, I think you're selling yourself short. 5 Simba barks in there.
Yeah. 5 coin flips.
Washed
that
it
was
all down with a nice IPA chug. Don't forget that.
Yeah.
7.8%. It was so hard. So only beer.
Regardless, you missed your time by at least double the time you aimed for, but you're on anyway, so that's what matters. It's grit, it's determination. It's what we look for in this podcast. As always, we're going to start the show with what we like to call Take Montezuma. We have very down-to-earth, very thought-out takes throughout the rest of the show, but we need to get the hot takes out of the way first so that we can get to that level of quality that the fans come to expect. As always, Take Montezuma, sponsored by Soiree Season. If you're looking for products where AI is not going to take their job in a couple years, check out Soiree Season for the best wedding registry company out there. Promo code CRUSHFF for 40% off. Johnny, you're the guest. Take Montezuma's all yours. Fire up.
Yeah. We'll go life or football?
Your choice.
I'll go life. Try to keep it a little on brand with your phenomenal intro, James, about, I am a financial advisor, my day job. My take...
Do we need to give a disclaimer here that this is not financial advice?
This is not financial advice. It's not financial advice. I do need to say, I don't think people are spending enough money. I think people should be spending more money as a whole. And I have some theories behind that. Like, when I met with a lot of sweet people who are in retirement, their first thing they always realize is, wow, we were so frugal, we saved, and we can spend way more than we ever thought. I think within moderation, people should be spending more money in the earlier years. Sub 35, sub 40 on key activities. Bachelor parties. Travel experiences, not like buying goods of like going buy like a new like Louis Vuitton X. Like that's stupid. But like in terms of buying experiences that enhance your life, like you'll get such a higher happiness level on a scale of 1 to 10 doing it at that age. But then you would do it at 45, 50, even if you could spend double the amount. You want to get double the happiness. All in all, people aren't spending enough money. They should be spending more money. Caveat, not financial advice, caveat within moderation.
And the best part is if you spend more and pair it with John Edelman Financial Services, it's
Yep.
like you're spending more and not losing more. So it's
Yep.
perfect. It's a win-win.
Yep, I agree.
Isn't credit card debt at like all-time highs?
Yeah. You avoid that. That's bad.
That is financial advice.
What that means is people don't have more to spend.
Okay.
This generation's doing worse off. We know the stats. We're doing worse off than the generations before. College debt, the whole thing. Buy now, pay later. Do people have more money to spend?
Yes, I think they do. I think you should make more money as well, and also spend that significant money. Don't do it with credit cards.
Only other thing is, like, it's easy to say that with compounding, right? Like, where you're like, oh, I have way more than what I thought I'd have.
So here's the part on that. One of the caveats you have, like, this is directed to people who have a job that will be making $200,000 at one point in their life. If you get to that point and you're 45 and you're making $200,000 of what feels like today, and you can live a lifestyle where you can tuck away, you'll be able to save more money that can, again, replace the compounding of that in the future. So I feel like some people don't spend enough money, and they should enjoy their lives.
I can't wait for the offshoot Crush Finance podcast. All right, Dolan, you want to kick off our deep dive?
Yeah. So basically, this is another roster review we got going on, but this time we're not looking at just James or Ma's roster. We brought on Johnny as our guest here. And so similar strategy. I think this one's interesting because Johnny's definitely in a different stage of his dynasty process than James and I are with our teams. As much as I hate to say it in front of him, Johnny is currently the number one team on our power ranking spot. And so he's heading into the season with some very, very, very high hopes. And Johnny, I'd love to, listen and hear what you have to say about how you got there, what your goals are for the season, how long you think your window is going to be open, and just talk us through the big picture of the strategy you think through with your team.
Yeah, big picture, I think that some teams in the league, they don't move the needle in terms of their aggression, in terms of their risk level. Like, I view my team more like a John Gruden-esque run franchise. So I think my current window, without making any moves, we always could pivot. Great leaders always pivot when necessary. Could be like a 2-year window. In terms of the skill players, my greatest strength, I'd argue, is that I have the quarterback room for the foreseeable window. So I have the boy, where I made a great trade 2 years ago to acquire him, the rights to draft him, and I also have Lamar. And so it's kind of a two-headed monster.
All right, so how do you view your you said quarterbacks, right? You have essentially two of the top four, right? You're in a place of luxury. How do you think about behind it, right? Because when you look behind, you have absolutely zero depth. You're like, it doesn't matter if the time comes and one of those guys gets hurt, are you punting on the season, or are you essentially just going to make the move at that moment, see how things play out? Do you even think about it?
Yeah, it is totally dependent on the injury. So I think if it happens, I think earlier on the year, potentially on the season. But my skilled players are pretty good. We could make it happen. If I got a quarterback that's 20 to 25 in that range, and I paid a premium at the beginning of the season to get him, I might do that move. I acquired my big franchise fab acquisitions this year were Kenny Pickett and Joe Flacco for $64 fab and $36 fab, respectively, out of a $100 fab budget. So that was a little bit of a misallocation of resources there. Picked up Dylan Gabriel, and we did not end up getting Shador Sanders, but that was the plan, to own the Browns quarterback room, to have that as a resource. Got Tyler Shuck in there. He's allegedly holding out / not looking the best according to preseason training camp. So we'll see. That is a weak spot in terms of the depth. I think I would be inclined to play a Browns quarterback and then see how things go and try to get a not top 20 quarterback and make a run. But I'd also be fine punting and trading away a top skill player, such as an A.J. Brown, get a draft pick, and then get some key movement for next year.
But yeah, I think what's important too is adding and painting the picture for some of the context around this team. Like, yes, you have those 2-star quarterbacks, but the rest of your starting lineup, I would say, with the exception of maybe one hole, is pretty impressive as well. So why don't you give us that rundown so people know what we're working with there?
So in terms of our running back room is pretty, again, very top-heavy, our second best position group. We have Jahmyr Gibbs, Saquon as the RB1, RB2. And then extending off that, we have a lot of depth. That was one of our offseason goals there. Javonte Williams and Miles Sanders. So hopefully, might be a little bit of a committee in Dallas, but there's a possibility one of them could be all right there. J.K. Dobbins, who apparently just crushing R.J. Harvey in every aspect. So that's great. We got Demont. So coming back, if God forbid Droops remembers Jameer, even he'll be a stud. Even with Jameer in a vacuum, he'll probably be okay. And we got Brian Robinson, and then the big acquisition this offseason, Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt. Guys, I'm hearing beat reporters for Washington saying B-Rob might get cut before week 1 and I'd be okay with it because this guy's looking so good. That I'm a 7th round pick. Fresh legs. Didn't play last year. Fresh legs. The freshest legs you've ever seen. We got Jalen Sampson, stud. Poor Judkins. We won't speak on legal comments here on this podcast. Jonathan Brooks hurt. Sad story. And then, can't pronounce his name, but Bishal Tutton. A little wild card, a little bit of speed there as well. So deep running back rooms. We're only going to be putting out week 1 Jameer and Saquon. So receivers are a step down from that, but still pretty strong. Our starting lineup is JSN, Terry, so go on Terry, sign the contract, AJ Brown, and Tyreek Hill. And then on the bench, we have Alec Pierce, sneaky athletic, good route runner, Debo, and young legend. Some people are saying steal the draft at the start at the 3rd round, Jaden Higgins. And then we got a couple other scrubs that we drafted on the back end. And then lastly, to round it up, people are saying the deepest tight end room, starting from the 5th overall tight end we have a team, Mike Gesicki. Big Austin contract, likes Joe Burrow. People are saying the offense, it's Higgins, Chase, Gesicki, according to Joe Burrow. Big 3. We got Zach Ertz. Old guy, still got legs. Still a common player we both like. Nice little stack with Jadon if you need to. Kelsey, one more time. He's still a tight end 1 in the league. Njoku, a lot of chemistry between him and Dylan Gabriel, so I'm hearing. And then the comeback kid. People are saying, should I go and redraft Jamar Chase 101? Should I throw in Jefferson or Kyle Pitts? He's golfing with Penix. He's making one-handed catches every time I log on to X. And most importantly, he's back mentally sharp. I have over $100 in futures on Kyle Pitts going into the season. But that's the team to frame the conversation.
Yeah, so I guess the one thing, just looking at the screen here and listening to the roster, there's a lot of Commanders action in there, and hard to remove some bias from that, but also an offense that has shown some promise last year. Was this an intentional stacking of the offense, or is this just some homerism coming in there? How did you wind up so Commander heavy, Johnny?
Yeah, that what was that old FTX ad, fortune favors the bold. That's kind of how I feel like my whole luck has happened with the sleeper league. If you have more fun in the league and you're willing to make more transactions and just try to have fun, good things happen to you. So it was intentional stacking, but there's still a little bit of logic behind it. I sold Brian Robinson before. I've sold a couple players. And I got the pick. I drafted Jaden to the 2024 103 draft at 103. Yeah. Did I end up getting really lucky and getting Jaden? Yes, I did. So there's more 80% favoritism, 20% favoritism guided by logic.
Is there any part of you that's like, oh, it's a good offense, everyone eats in a good offense, so let me stack it, so it's the best ball concept? Or okay. And then it's there's risk there, obviously, if Jaden gets hurt.
Yeah, let me put the example. The example I would give you is I got Terry the same offseason to pair him with Jaden. Yeah, I think I gave Courtland Sutton a second, which at the time was probably maybe an overpay or fair. That was more logic. Me picking Jalen Lane at pick 306 when there were a lot of good running backs still on the board, probably more favoritism on that aspect. So.
Dolan, question for you. When do you like this strategy in Dynasty, if ever? The loading up on what you imagine is an pretty good offense, right? Because if you had a lot of Bengals last year, it would have done really well. Is it something you'd ever do?
I think yes, but I think the best way to do it, and Johnny I think was pretty close to this. I think he was a year ahead of buying into the offense a year before they break out. It's easy to say, hey, I would love to stack the Bengals offense now or the Lions offense or the Eagles offense now, but most teams aren't going to have enough assets on their hands to be able to just buy all of that without completely bankrupting their team or being extremely thin elsewhere. Where I think the right move is what Johnny did, and we saw, IT guy do this with the Bengals a couple years ago before they were good, is buy an offense that you think is about to break out because you can get them at reasonable or even discounted prices and then swing for the fences. So I think there are a couple of offenses that can fall into that category this year, but I think that's when I like to do it. As long as you're, I don't know, to speak in finance terms for Johnny here, value investing rather than anything else, I think that's when it tends to pay off the most.
Who do you think is a good team? I have an idea that might be good, that is not being evaluated accordingly, that could break out as an offense this year.
It's a great question. I've thought about this a lot. I think the one for me is probably the Patriots. Obviously, the quarterback and now the running back are gaining a ton of steam, so those two are expensive. But I think if you can somehow pay the big bucks for May, and then acquiring all of his pass catchers, I think would be extremely cheap unless you're throwing Travion into that group, I think is where I'd be interested in placing that buy low bet, because May is very expensive on his own right now, but he's not at the Jaden Daniels unattainable level expensive. So I think that's the one that jumps out to me, just because I think he will single-handedly make the offense great, and everybody else is super cheap besides him and Henderson.
Mine's the Niners. I think so I think last year was all-time bad with the injury luck. This year they have an exceptionally good schedule. I think Brock Purdy's a very good quarterback. And so besides McCaffrey, I think taking shots on Purdy, Kittle, and a combination of Ricky Pearsall, Juwan Jennings, and Ayuk scares me a little bit, but I think the Niners are going to be really good this year. And I don't know if that's a breakout if they were good 2 years ago, but I think they're going to be awesome, and those pieces are super affordable.
In terms of fantasy, I think the Jags might be very undervalued right now with the exclusion of BTN, right? Higher. I mean, he's going to be a top receiver, but their running back room is up for grabs. And, even their starter, ETN, is, pretty depressed. He's, at running back, 38 and, keep trade cut right now. So, pretty – and that's their starter, projected starter, so pretty low. And, I think Tutton is, running back 41, 40. So, there's not a big – delta between them, and I think Trevor Lawrence, I think from a fantasy production perspective, could actually come back a little bit, especially with their new head coach, the Jags. So we'll see what happens to that. But
let's actually there's a good example. Let's double click this once more. When you do this strategy, right, or if you're even considering doing this strategy, and the backfield's so ambiguous, like the Jags are, do you take a shot on the one you think's going to hit, or do you essentially do what Johnny did with the Commanders and acquire all of them? And then you're essentially paying up for you're going to get the hit if the offense hits, but you're paying up and you don't know if all those guys will have that.
Yeah, I got it. So if it's a situation where there's an incumbent that is probably going to be a starter that's not a veteran but a 3+ year guy in the league, and there's some fresh blood like a rookie, you got to get both. Okay.
You got to get
both. If it's a situation where it's the Cowboys, where Jaden Blue's there, but there's not looking so far that he's going to start, I think you just take the incumbent, right? Or whoever you think is going to be the best odds. Because
you take the chance.
Yeah, you take the chance.
But the incumbent's always going to be priced higher. And do you take the shot on the rookie who could have the most valuable and the best price, right? Or do you take – you get the point.
What would you have – so right now, in Denver, obviously you're going to take the rookie they just drafted. But J.K. Dobbins is cheaper and is allegedly the starter, right? So in that case, value, if you just want to get exposure, I think from the most value, better value would be Dobbins, but he's way cheaper than that pick would be. So I don't know. I think in that case, you try to get you want to avoid drafting Rachaad White and putting all your hopes more when there's a Bucky Irving on the precipice. That's a risk it's probably worth paying to hedge, in my opinion. So I don't know, Dolan, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, this is where my strategy is a little interesting. I always try and, to your point about hedging, kind of hedge across leagues. I don't like to, say, hey, I'm going to have all 3 Jaguars running backs, for example, on the same roster. What I like to do is say, hey, I'll have one of them on this dynasty team, one of them on this dynasty team, and I'll make sure to draft the other in redraft at some point, so that over the course of a given year, it's I'm probably getting solid running back production out of one of them. And so it's increasing your odds of just getting some sort of a payout if you have these 2 dart throws, and if it works in one of your leagues, that league's getting a huge boost. And because of the murkiness, the other 2 leagues probably aren't taking a huge hit because of what you paid for those other guys as well. So that's typically my strategy, is spreading it out across the leagues to get more, darts to throw rather than hyper consolidating within just one roster, because then that can kind of make your team feel pretty cramped.
So Johnny, based on kind of my back of the napkin math, I'm going to go through some transactions, hopefully really quick. So you gave up DK Hawk in a second for T. Higgins and 2/3. Then you gave up recently acquired Higgins and B-Rob for Hollywood, Demont, a 26 first, a 27 second, a 26 second. But then you changed your mind. You're like, wait, I shouldn't have given up B-Rob. You traded those 2 seconds back for B-Rob, right? Like 2 weeks later. And so you essentially gave up a 26 first straight up for T. Higgins. Then you traded that 26 first straight up for Tyreek. So instead of T. Higgins in your spot, you have Tyreek.
Yeah.
So I think you should have just stuck with T, because I think the upside's similar, and I think you're getting 5 years younger. And there's a lot of, Dolan will go into the Tyreek red flags, but I think there's a lot of red flags that T doesn't have.
I think the way you just articulated that, it would be extremely valid. The rationale of guiding these trades, I think you have to look at the bigger strategy of my goal, which is to own the third round, which I'm happy I did it, because I got some sick guys in there. So a lot of these trades, like to get Higgins at the time from you, and this is a different conversation, like of the thought process. Was a deeper draft than most years in terms of running backs and receivers, and it was an average.
I will not agree to that on receivers.
Okay, well, in terms of, let me say, skill players overall. Okay, this is also one of the drafts after making our, for context for everyone, we made a transition 2022 to go super flex. So now the quarterbacks are taking more of a premium. The skill players we could have gotten their game factored in terms of that pricing. And so I got picks 301, 302, and then 304 up until 310. Tyreek, I'm a believer in him. And I know Dolan, I'm happy to go tit for tat with Dolan. Higgins, he's great. He's going to be great for 12 games, how I priced him in. He's a top 15 guy for 12 games. And I think Tyreek has a similar upside to that. Why did I trade back for Brian Robinson? A little bit of a lot of bias coming in there, but I never wanted to trade him away in the first place. I just had to trade him away to get the assets to then trade for James to get the third round picks that I wanted. And so once I had the opportunity to get get him back, I was happy to do so. It was more so I just wanted the third rounders to complete a control study, which I think is going to turn out to be favorable for me, but we'll see. And I think if I would argue, the one question I would pitch for specifically for both of you, actually, if you looked at the people like I drafted a third round this year, we can go through them. The day I drafted, there was whatever, he got lucky with Kyle Williams dropping, da-da-da. Who's Ja'Cory Crosby-Merritt? I think even in a 2 month and a half window, those draft picks have appreciated, even for like a Devin Sampson, for instance, with what's going on. And so I think it's been worth it, but that's, again, I'm not looking overall like, who would I rather have, Higgins or Tyreek? Yes, Higgins this year in Dynasty I'd rather have. Tyreek, I think, is 85 to 90% of Higgins for 65, 70% of the price. So that's all I have here.
You paid the same price.
Let me just give context here. So basically what Johnny did is he tried to acquire the entire third round in a 10-team league. He acquired 9 out of the 10 third-round picks.
And the pick that didn't get drafted was Shedeur Sanders.
Shedeur Sanders, correct. Dolan, Tyreek as an asset this year, as a 2025 redraft player.
Just too risky for my blood. If I'm giving up a first-round pick in a trade, I want a guy
he is.
Banking on 2 to 3 years minimum of high-end production, and I just don't think I'm getting that out of Tyreek. And so I would have just bitten the bullet and held out for some other sort of a trade and used that first for something more valuable is where I'm at. I don't think he moves the needle. I don't think Tyreek Hill increases your odds of winning the championship this year so significantly that what you're trading off in the future years is worth it by getting rid of that first is where I net out.
Disagree, obviously. So I think I'm not viewing Tyreek as holding any residual value after a 2-year window. My goal is that he's an elite this year, and there's obviously injury concerns. I think the concerns more than the injury are the health of his quarterback, right? So that is the risk. But I think the reward for taking that risk on the upside, the dude is a top 5 guy, could be a top 5 outcome. There's not many receivers who are being priced in and a 3rd to 4th round value that have a top 5 realistic range of outcomes, and that's in that window.
All right, so I got one question. I want to take this in a little bit of a different direction, and going back in time a little bit here, because I think one of the reasons your team did get so impressive and in such a strong contention mode right now is because a couple of years ago you did tear it down to the studs. You did, sell off and I think prove a very successful tank operation, which is not super easy to do for everybody. So it sounds like part of your rationale here is, hey, I have some comfort level taking that approach again if things don't go well. So let's walk through this scenario. Either way, you can talk about how you did it a couple of years ago, or hey, what happens if the wheels do fall off? Like, what are some of those first steps? Like, gives people some insight into how they would approach a strategy with a similar team, or maybe the pessimistic outlook of the team.
Yeah, I mean, what happens if Jaden or Lamar, God forbid, get hurt? I think the asset I'd most willing, I'd want to sell, people like Saquon, but for instance, I tried to trade him with Dolan this year. People are already starting, and the market's already factoring in his age decline, right? So he's someone it's probably worth to me to kind of ride like Derrick Henry and just hope for the best from a return I get. So someone like a Jameer is prime. You gotta be willing to trade because you're going to get 2 first and hopefully some candy on the way back for that. Someone like a JSN, right, would be a prime sell. AJ Brown would get a good return, but he's someone it's very dependent on the offer for what you might get back for him. Further, looking at a tight end, I have 5 tight ends. I could sell 3 of them for second and thirds quickly. So you gotta be willing to take the most valuable spot and just rip the Band-Aid off to get. And that point, you're just getting back as much. You don't care about players. It's just aggregate value you're getting back at that point.
No, I 100% agree, and I'll just reinforce. I think that part is so important. I think too many people look at, I want to rebuild, and all they try and do is sell the obvious ones. They would look at your roster and say, okay, I got to get rid of Saquon and AJ Brown and Tyreek. Those are the easy ones, but you're not selling those guys at peak value. I think the hardest part and what you did so well is being willing to say, I kind of want to sell these guys who could be foundational pieces because they are at peak value. I think a lot of people would, let's say things go south, not even consider the idea of selling Jahmyr Gibbs. They'd look at him and be like, no way, he's elite. But I think you're sharp enough to understand, okay, maybe this guy's never going to be this valuable ever again. He'll probably still be extremely valuable next year and the year after that, but I can get an absolutely game-changing haul if I were to sell that type of player now. And I think more people need to look at rebuilding and reconstructing their roster that way, of being able to sell players at peak value, not necessarily just, hey, I'm trying to get rid of the old guys in a push to get younger.
You can't have a Ferrari if you're not already in a penthouse, right? So you can't have a player like Jahmyr if you're not going to be in a realistic spot to actually contend for a championship. You got to, or within the following year. So if you're not going to be there, you got to offload him for that peak value and get a good plug-and-play player and get a larger aggregate asset value in return and go from there. James, you're pointing at yourself.
Dude, it's so hard to do. Yeah, I want Jahmyr. It's so hard to do. I don't know how you guys do it. Funny question for you. So when you're tearing it down, do you always look just, I think the common currency is picks, right? So is your preference to sell it all for whatever level of player, right? Do you want picks back, or do you look for a combination of young player and picks? When tearing down.
Picks are the easiest. Picks are the easiest.
Yep.
I think that if you have, and everyone in the league has, you have people our good friend Don, who has extremely high conviction in his opinions about players. So everyone has conviction about players to varying levels of degrees. For example, I'll give you, James, in our historical Bijan trade, you gave me Jameson Williams, Bijan, DJ
Adam
Moore.
broken out. Well, let's
I'm going to clarify that.
it.
This is very much pre-breakout JMO, very much
Correct.
after 2 years in the offseason.
Saquon was still a giant.
Saquon was a giant.
And DJ Moore, who had not broken it before he had his wide receiver 4 finish. But he was
it was during that year.
During that year.
He was on his way. Yeah. After his 45-point game.
And a second for Bijan, and I think his backup running back, whoever that was at the time.
Algier.
JMO was someone I would have been I put in my head as all right, he's probably worth pick 202 to 204. Could he have the upside of out to an average 202 to 204 pick? And I could think about players in that range to outperform that. Yeah, he could. And this is what I have. So if there's younger players who are more akin to, you feel comfortable, are more akin to draft picks in the way that they could have a bigger boomer bust or more unknown average outcomes, then I'm willing to accept them because they have value and like it's worth taking a risk on it. Draft picks are preferable. Draft picks, I think, would be the more common acceptable currency. But you have, again, if there's a value, like you have to be fluid in your opinions on the valuation of those assets. For a young player, old player, no, you probably don't want it unless it's like literally someone like a Mike Evans. Then you just take it like at face value. Like he's old, but he'll produce for you. Like
yeah, I think at the end of the day, for me, it's you have to be willing to sell those Mike Evans type guys for like 80 cents on the dollar. You can't value hunt and hope that you're going to get that full dollar
Evan
value
Ingram.
because it might disappear later. Evan Ingram is
Evan
an
Ingram.
interesting example there. But then I think you just have to do whatever you can to acquire assets that are going to be more valuable in the future than they are now, whether that's picks young players or even like or even past their prime player who you're just like, they're undervalued for some reason. I think you have to play that game in some way, shape, or form.
All right, Johnny, who will start the most games at tight end for you this season?
Damn. Dude, I think Pitts. I think Pitts. And I think Pitts because I think there's a chance in order I would go Pitts is like 55% likely to start the most games. Kelsey, just from having the target share. And by the way, this is Kelsey's last year. Don't let anyone tell you differently. He's gone. He's dead after this year. He's done.
No, he still has the New Heights podcast.
Dude, he's retiring. I guarantee it.
And an budding acting career.
I think the sleeper to get the most would be Ertz again, just from the stack with Jaden. That's unique to my team. And then Njoku is like talent-wise. It just depends on like how the Browns' passing game actually shapes up.
Dolan, what do you think?
I think it'll end up being Njoku. I think he'll be the most valuable of that group over the course of a full season. I agree Pitts has the most upside though. But I feel like Njoku will be the most reliable.
Crush Fantasy Football, episode 12. Johnny, pleasure.
Any closing thoughts, Johnny? Anything you didn't get to say yet?
Closing comment is I think for all those people out there, my trade advice would be if there's a franchise that historically has traded away players that were underperforming and they end up being good later, you should try to trade with that team as much as possible.